All right, we're jumping here into the Atlantic Division, and the first team here is the defending champs, the Boston Celtics. Their 23-24 record, 64-18. They finished as the 1 seed, won the NBA championship. Their over-under here for 24-25 is 58.5. And let me also tell you some other interesting things that really happened for Boston this offseason. Nothing really. They didn't do much. They kind of kept their core together. So I don't think they did a lot of changes here. So what are your thoughts on the Celtics here, Osama? Tell me.
I mean, they were awesome last year. The season was pretty much over in March. They clinched the 1 seed with plenty of time before the playoffs started. They were a complete juggernaut. They kept their core that ran through the East. They're a great shooting team. They had the number one offense in the league with an offensive rating of 123. They were the number 3 ranked defense. Usually, if you're in the top 5 in both categories, you win the championship, which they did. So, I mean, really great. I would say the only knock would be health. Porzingis was such a huge part of what they did last year. He only played 57 games, and it still didn't matter. The only guy that played all 82 games was Peyton Pritchard. So I think as long as they can stay healthy, they just have so much talent with Drew Holiday they added last year, and Porzingis, and Al Horford was just such a great value add with Tatum and Brown. I don't see how they don't have the 1 seed again this year.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And are you going over on the 58.5?
Yeah. I mean, it's unless maybe the Knicks give them a run for their money and it becomes a little more difficult. But I mean, they're talented enough to get to 62 wins.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, everything you said, right? Super talented team. They're deep. Only thing that can stop them is really injuries. Cool. All right, with that, let's move on to the next team here, the New York Knicks. Before we jump into everything about them, their 23-24 record was 50-32. They were the 2 seed. The over-under here is set at 54.5. The Knicks, they did a lot of things here in the offseason. They re-signed OG, they re-signed Brunson, they re-signed Precious, and then they added guys like Mikal Bridges, right? And then they added Karl Anthony Towns through trade, and then they signed like Campaign for some depth, but they lost some guys, right? They lost Isaiah Hardenstein, they lost Bojan, Alec Burks, Randall, Dante, Devincino. So they lost some guys there, and then they picked up a few rookies. I think they made a bunch of draft day moves, but they drafted some French dude or something with the 25th pick. His name is Pacom Dait. Can't pronounce his name. And then they had some second round guys like Tyler. Yeah, and then Tyler Kolek, right? And then so they had some second round guys here. What are your thoughts here, Osama? I do like what the Knicks did, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, they were kind of a surprise last year, right? Like the Mavericks let go of Jalen Brunson. You're like, okay, I mean, they probably didn't need to. He seemed like a good player. And he was like amazing. He was so good for them last year. He was their best player above and beyond. And, now that they traded for OG, like the Knicks front office is really going for it. And they added Cat. I heard the kid Miro on a podcast call him Bodega Cat, which I like better than the big Bodega as his nickname. And it really just addressed the things that Randall couldn't provide, which was that perfect combination of length and shooting, which Cat gives them. There's some familiarity there with Tom Thibodeau as well from his time in Minnesota. They added Mikal Bridges. I think like they were already a pretty good defensive team last year. They were 10th in defensive efficiency. Adding Bridges makes them even more stingy. This is going to be a solid team, 2 seed, unless something crazy happens. They could even, hell, make a run at the 1 seed, but this is easily the second best team in the East at the minimum.
100% agree with you. I think they're gonna. I think we're gonna see a Knicks Celtics Eastern Conference Finals, bearing any injuries. I think that is what the East is setting up for. Like it's Knicks versus Celtics, and that's what we're hopefully gonna get, and that's what I want to see. I think this team is gonna be deep. It's gonna be dangerous. We'll see, right? How they mesh together, but definitely 2 seed, definitely hitting the over on that 54.5 as well.
Yep.
All right, let's move on over to the third team here in this division, the Philadelphia 76ers. Their record last year was 47-35. They finished with the 7th seed. Obviously, Joel Embiid always injured. I think the other day he said, I'm never going to play back to backs for the rest of my career. So that just tells you where Joel Embiid's at. Over under here is 49.5. Let's see some of their key additions here. They re-signed obviously Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. They brought over Paul George. They added Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, Caleb Martin. They lost guys Nick Batum, Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton, Campaign Mobamba, and they drafted Jared McCain here at pick number 13. So I know the Sixers brought in Paul George. There's a lot of hype around him, but what do you think here, Osama? Can they do better than the 7 seed? Can they do better than 49.5?
Yeah, let's talk about this because I'm looking at the spreadsheet and you have a pretty hot take about them. You think they'll be the eighth seed, which is interesting. Here's what I think. Last year, they only got about 39 games from Joel Embiid. They did add a lot of veteran depth. They are built to make a long run in the playoffs. Maxey had a breakout year last year. Health is just the biggest thing, but they still had the 14th best offense. Not too bad given that Embiid played a pretty small percentage of the season. And they added Paul George, who went on the Clippers last year with a fourth best offense in the league. And he's a great defender. Joel Embiid's a great defender. So I think this is a good team. I have them projected at 5, but I need to hear why you think they'll be the 8th seed.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the under on them. I just don't see it with Embiid in terms of his health, right? I don't think it's kind of the same story. It's the same script we see every year. Joel Embiid's hurt. He's not healthy enough for the playoffs, and then we all know playoff P, right? So can they go far? Can they do things? Maybe. Paul George is already hurt. He hyperextended his knee the other day. Already some injury things here. So I when fully healthy, they could be a dangerous team. I just haven't seen it between Embiid and Paul George in terms of both being fully healthy and kind of carrying them. And I think there's better teams here in the East, honestly, right? Like I think we'll get to them, but the Magic, the Pacers, the Bucks, I think they're better than the 76ers. So I do think the 76ers are going to be right there in that play-in mix here, and it's all going to come down to the health of Embiid and Paul George is where I'm going.
Yeah, I'm an optimist, and I try not to factor in the health just because I think that's the best they could do, but I get it. It's probably more realistic that they're closer to that playing spot than the top 6 just because of health.
Yep. All right, let's move on over to the end of the Atlantic Division here with the Brooklyn Nets. Last year they were 32-50, the 11th seed. Their over-under here is 21.5. What are your thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets, who really don't have a superstar outside of Ben Simmons and hoping he's healthy?
Yeah, this is a weird team. I think when we did the preview last year, they were just like an absurd collection of wings, and they still are. They got rid of Mikal Bridges. They still have Simmons, like you said. I think Royce O'Neal is gone. So they made a few moves. Despite being pretty bad, they still have the 23rd best offense in the league. I thought they would be a little lower than that. And the defensive efficiency was at 20th. They're stuck, though, because of all the assets they got in getting Kevin Durant and James Harden. They kind of have to try to stay competitive due to a lack of assets. So they're in a tough spot, and they're not a good team.
They are not a good team at all. Like I think I'm gonna say they're gonna finish basically at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Like unless Ben Simmons turns out to an All NBA, like first team All NBA type of player, even then that might push them just at the very bottom of the play-in. So definitely, I think they're about a 20-win team this year. So right on that under, and the bottom seed here in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
All right, and this is our last team here. Sorry, in the Atlantic, not the Nets. The Nets are the least team in the Atlantic, but our last team here is the Toronto Raptors. So 23, 24, 25, and 57, the 12th seed. This year, over-under is 30.5. I'm not sure if they made any big additions here. Not really. They re-signed Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley. They added Davion Mitchell, and they lost Gary Trent. They drafted Jacoby Walters in the first round of this draft. So that's really it. I don't know. What are your thoughts here, Osama? What are you thinking here? Are they better than that 12th seed? Are they better than 30 wins? What are you thinking?
I think they're a little better than 30 wins, not that much better. I think they can get close to the over. They're a lot better than they sound. They with RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Gary Trent. I think that they'll hit that. Last year, I think that they were in a bit of a mess. Scotty Barnes only played, I think, 60 games or so. They got Otto Porter, and he played like maybe 10 games. They're not great, but they're better than 30 wins. I think they can only get better from here.
I disagree with you on that. I think they're right there at 30 wins. They're not. I think we just need to see more growth from Scotty Barnes, and that's really
Yeah.
it because they were kind of like, oh, this is the face of our franchise. This is the guy we need him to carry us. So we just need to see more growth from Scotty Barnes. If he, ends up being an all NBA type of guy, then maybe yeah, they're better than 30 wins. But I think pretty much rests on his shoulders, right? And so I think he's not quite there yet, but he's definitely like obviously a superstar in the making, and he's going to get there. But I think this year, not there. 30 wins.
There's some teams that are really bad that we have projected underneath them, which is why they're a fringe playing team. They could spiral down for sure. I think there are some pretty bad teams also in the Eastern Conference. There could be
Yes,
worse.
yes, yes. It could be worse.